Okay, this reading is uncomfortable because somebody believed they had protected their secret from every possible direction. They thought the financial part could be explained away. They believed the person who knew what happened could be managed. And they assumed you would continue doubting yourself long enough for them to stay in control. That protection is beginning to fail. This is a collective reading, so take the part that matches your situation and leave the rest. I'm seeing different ways the same behavior may have appeared. Somebody watching may recognize missing money, gambling, nightlife, or a private habit. Another person may be dealing with a third party, friend, coworker, ex, or relative who knows more than they were supposed to reveal. And somewhere here, a person used disappearing and inconsistent communication because they assumed your trust would return whenever they did. The common thread is not simply that somebody made a mistake. They built different explanations for different people, and now those explanations are beginning to meet. The first thing I need to tell you is that this does not feel like one impulsive mistake. History says there is a past behind what is happening now. This could be behavior they repeated in previous relationships, friendships, jobs, or financial situations. It may also mean the current situation began much earlier than they admitted. Somebody could eventually discover that the starting date was false. Your person may have described an old connection as somebody who had only recently returned, even though communication between them never completely stopped. A financial problem might also have been presented as new when the debt, gambling, or hidden spending had existed for much longer. The long nose is especially interesting because the figure is not simply shown lying. The person appears to be working inside a laboratory with a graph rising behind the nose. That looks constructed. Somebody attempted to create an explanation that sounded logical and benefited them. The lie may have contained enough real information to survive simple questions. For example, they may genuinely have received less money one month, but that was not the complete reason a bill went unpaid. They might truly have been helping a friend or relative, but omitted what else happened during the same evening. That is why you questioned yourself. The explanation was not necessarily completely false. It was arranged to lead you toward the wrong conclusion. Then shadow self brings denial, projecting, and shame. Whenever you came close to what was actually happening, the focus may have been pushed back onto you. Instead of answering a direct question, this person could have accused you of being suspicious, jealous, controlling, negative, or unable to trust. But asking why money disappeared, why a story changed, or why two dates do not match is not the same as being controlling. This person was more comfortable discussing your reaction than explaining the behavior that caused it. That is the pattern underneath everything else in this reading. This part is very specific and it will not belong to everybody. The cash, gavel, and handcuffs shown on financial support, along with the words child, alimony, and government, point toward money connected to an obligation or official arrangement. Child support, alimony, benefits, a settlement, family assistance, or another formal payment may be literal. For somebody else, this is shared household money, money borrowed for an emergency, or one person continually helping another remain financially stable. Receiving support is not the issue. The deception concerns where the money went or why another payment was needed. This person may have claimed the money was required for rent, a vehicle, a child, medical costs, legal expenses, or an overdue account. But the original problem never seemed to disappear. Another emergency arrived before the previous one was resolved. Then nightlife changes the direction. It shows drinking, nightlife, gambling, Vegas, and risk-taking. Money meant for something practical may have been spent during evenings out, on a trip, at a casino, through a betting application, or while entertaining somebody they did not want you to know about. I keep seeing one ordinary charge exposing more than they expected. It could be a late-night cash withdrawal, a rideshare from an unfamiliar location, a hotel charge, or a payment made at a time when this person claimed to be somewhere else. Chance, with the slot machine displaying another loss, shows repeated risk. This was probably not one unlucky evening. Somebody believed the next attempt would correct the previous loss. That is how small financial problems can become much larger. Money is lost, so more money is risked trying to recover it. A payment intended for an obligation becomes the temporary solution, and then another explanation is needed when that payment is missing. The ashtray/cigarettes image adds a consuming habit. Cigarettes may be literal, but the image can represent any private behavior that repeatedly burns through money in small amounts. Alcohol, vaping, gambling, frequent partying, or another habitual expense may fit. I would not force this into an illegal substance situation without further evidence. The important message is repetition. Something that looked minor individually became significant when added together. Then nausea shows the moment the situation can no longer be explained comfortably. This can be genuine panic, the sick feeling that appears when somebody asks for a statement, receipt, payment record, or proof of where the money went. For somebody watching, financial help may now be withdrawn. A family member refuses to cover another emergency. The person who had been carrying the household separates their finances. If an official agreement is involved, paperwork, a review, or a legal conversation may follow. The backfire is not only that this person lost money. They may also lose access to the person or arrangement that kept rescuing them from the consequences. Now we move into a situation where another person knows more than they were supposed to reveal. Drama queen can represent a romantic third party, but it does not have to be a woman or a romantic connection. This could be an ex, coworker, friend, relative, or somebody who previously helped cover the situation. Their motives may not be completely pure. This person could be angry, jealous, embarrassed, or tired of being blamed. They might want attention or revenge. But somebody behaving dramatically does not automatically make the evidence false. Incantation shows a parrot beside a written story. That tells me the same explanation has been repeated so many times that another person can now recite it. They may have heard why the money was supposedly missing, why a relationship was allegedly ending, or why they needed to remain quiet a little longer. At first, this person may have believed the explanation. They could even have defended your person or agreed to keep something private. Eventually, they realize they were also being used. That is when information begins moving. It might not start with a dramatic confession. Somebody may ask a simple question about a particular date, payment, meeting, or relationship status. Once they receive the answer, they understand that the story they were given cannot be completely true. Then the magician shows the person at the center attempting to manage the situation strategically. Their first instinct may not be confession. It may be controlling the order in which people receive information. They contact somebody before you can. An online profile changes. A message is deleted. A friend or relative receives a defensive explanation before they have even heard what happened. This person could also describe whoever is revealing the information as unstable or obsessed, hoping their personality will discredit the evidence. The remote control image makes the behavior even clearer. They want to decide who has access, who is allowed to communicate, and when the conversation ends. Somebody may be blocked, unblocked, muted, or told not to respond. The objective is not only hiding the original secret, it is preventing the people involved from speaking freely to one another. But once two people compare even one part of what they were told, control begins slipping away. One person may have been encouraged to wait, while somebody else was reassured that nothing inappropriate was happening. Somewhere inside those explanations, the dates overlap. That is when the performance becomes impossible to maintain. This situation may have nothing to do with literal gambling or financial support. Here, the risk was emotional. The ghost shows somebody who disappears whenever closeness requires accountability. They could communicate warmly until you ask a direct question. Then the conversation slowed down, stopped, or changed direction. After enough time passed, they returned casually. The return may have been small, a reaction online, a late-night message, a question about how you were doing, or a conversation that completely avoided the unresolved issue. They expected the emotional connection to restart without repairing what happened before the disappearance. This may have happened repeatedly. The silence gave them distance from the difficult conversation. Returning later allowed them to check whether access to you was still available. And then we have trust. This is the part they miscalculated. They assumed your love would continually restore the trust they kept damaging. They believed that enough time, affection, or nostalgia would make the unanswered question feel less important. But trust does not automatically reset because somebody returns. If this person contacts you again, listen to whether they clearly name what happened. They may speak about being overwhelmed, afraid, or in a bad emotional place. Those feelings can be real. The important question is whether they can discuss their behavior without turning the entire conversation into their suffering. Do they answer what they previously avoided? Does the explanation remain consistent? Can they respect it if you do not immediately welcome them back? If not, the return is not necessarily repair. It may simply be another attempt to discover whether the old access still works. The quiet backfire is that they return expecting the previous version of you and discover that person is no longer waiting. The truth does not necessarily arrive through one perfect confession. Eagle sees the entire landscape instead of focusing on one isolated detail. This is you stepping back and recognizing that several events are connected. A financial charge may have looked innocent on its own. A period of silence could have received a reasonable explanation. A third person's behavior may initially have looked like unnecessary drama. But once those details are placed together, they begin confirming one another. The dates, messages, financial activity, and communication changes create a larger picture. Then Agarthans brings multidimensional perception and attunement. In ordinary language, you sense that another layer existed before you could explain exactly what it was. That does not mean every suspicion or rumor should automatically be accepted as fact. Look at the source. Check what can actually be verified. Separate a person's emotional reaction from the evidence they are providing. But do not automatically dismiss yourself either. Your intuition may have been responding to a pattern that your conscious mind had not yet organized. Finally, speed shows what happens after the first solid piece appears. Events begin moving quickly. One conversation leads to another. Somebody who originally sent one message sends the remaining information. A person who stayed quiet decides to confirm what they witnessed. The person at the center no longer has time to prepare separate explanations. That is how the truth emerges, not necessarily through one spectacular revelation, but through several ordinary facts agreeing with one another. Now, I want to bring this reading completely back to you. Divine Feminine represents your dignity returning. This energy is not restricted by gender. It is knowing that you should not have to compete for honesty, stability, or basic respect. You do not need to create a larger scene than the one this person already created. You also do not have to convince every person involved that your version is correct. Allow verified facts to speak for themselves. Then Earth brings you back to what is practical and reliable. Protect your finances. Keep important records. Change shared passwords or account access if necessary. If money, support, or legal obligations are involved, rely on documentation rather than another private promise. Grounding yourself in practical facts will help you distinguish what you know from what you fear. Lyrans carry strength, courage, and bravery. Courage does not always mean a dramatic confrontation. It may mean refusing to continue a conversation until a direct question receives a direct answer. It can mean separating finances, seeking professional advice, or leaving a message unanswered until you are emotionally ready. It may also mean accepting that closure will not always arrive in the exact form you hoped to receive it. Then comes rise, represented by the butterfly. This situation changes you, but it does not destroy you. The attention you spent monitoring somebody's silence, explanations, spending, or emotional changes begins returning to your own life. You are no longer organizing your day around whether somebody contacts you. Finally, Pleiadians brings unconditional love, excitement, and laughter. This could eventually become a healthier romantic connection, but it can also represent friendships, family, creativity, or simply feeling like yourself again. You are not supposed to remain emotionally attached to this situation just so you can witness every consequence. The most important consequence has already happened. This person no longer controls what you believe. For one viewer, financial support is withdrawn. For another, somebody who had been protecting the secret begins talking. For someone else, the old disappearing and returning routine no longer produces the same response. The circumstances are different, but the loss of control is the same. You do not have to interrupt what is unfolding. Let people reveal themselves through their actions. Your part of this story is not waiting to see how badly they fall. Your part is recognizing that you are already moving beyond the situation they thought would keep you trapped. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next reading.